In the previous lesson, we learned about the point light and the spotlight. Now let's learn about parallel light and ambient light. Create a new light layer. This time, let's go for ambient light. You can see a lot of the options are grayed out because ambient light is going to just expose every 3D object in your composition. Essentially, it's similar to a fill light that you would use in real life. I'm going to add maybe a light blue. Hit OK. And there's our ambient light. So you can see it just illuminates everything. There's no shadows, there's no fall off, and everything is happening in one rate. Now the ambient light is nowhere to be seen because, like we said, it's not something that you can move around like you would in the other light types. When we open this up, we only have the light options, which is only the intensity and the color. We can reduce the intensity and get a pretty dark result, or make it really intense and just brighten up the entire thing. You can also change the color, like we learned. Make it white, make it red. And it's a good way to add a little bit of fill light for your 3D shapes. I'm going to go back to white and leave this to 100%. So that's our ambient light. It's pretty simple, nothing complicated. The last type of light is the parallel light, which is the most complicated one. Let's go to light, change this to our first option. Now the reason why it's complicated is because it's basically like the spotlight, but it's a little bit more advanced. So apart from reaching out to your subject that's in front of your light, it's also going to access the background, which is further away. So let's choose the color white, intensity 100, no fall off, and cast shadows. Hit OK. You can see the shape is pretty different compared to the other options. This is what it looks like. It's pretty different. You can see we get 3 little nodes that will help with the illumination of our shape. We also have the point of interest that we talked about. I'm going to bring it in front of my shape instead of behind it, because if we go behind, we're going to get a rather dim effect on our shape. But this is what I mean. It's illuminating the front of your shape and the back. So unlike the spot layer where we had light only in front of our shape, we also have it at the back. So this is a little bit more advanced compared to the other lights, but it could be pretty handy for some special cases. Now let's see what options we have here. For transform, we only have point of interest and position. So this is our point of interest. We got X, Y, and Z. Next, we have the position of the entire light. So this is X, Y, and Z. We cannot really work with the softness of our shadows. We don't have a cone or anything. The only thing that we can control is the intensity, which is apparent to every light type. The color of our parallel, make it different. We have the fall off option. I'm going to go with smooth, so we can get some interesting fall off results. Then we can choose a radius like we could for the other light types and the distance of our fall off. We can decide whether or not it casts shadows from our object. This is on, this is off. Increase the darkness of your shadow, which I wouldn't want to do that. But we don't have the option to diffuse our shadow, so you're going to get a pretty sharp result. So that's our parallel light. Just for the sake of experimenting, let's go ahead and turn on all 4 light types onto our shape. It's a pretty crazy looking shape, but you can see we got 1, 2, 3, and the ambient light. So those were how the lights work. It's pretty easy. We're going to use them quite often in the following lessons when we're making 3D compositions. But now I'm going to show you a situation where you would want to use maybe more than 2 lights or all 4, and that can help with the understanding of what role each of these lights play. I'm going to turn off all of these guys and change my composition. I'm going to delete my shape. Let's leave the camera be, just bring it above all of these guys. Delete my shape layer. Let's bring in a text layer. There's my text. I am going to turn this into 3D or else it won't work. And then use my geometry options. We're going to learn more about geometry options in the next lesson, but for now I'm just going to increase my extrusion depth. Just type in the same numbers that I am. In the next lesson we're going to see exactly what they are. Choose convex, increase the bevel depth. And there we go. So I'm going to hit C on my keyboard and just rotate this. Let's unlock our camera and just rotate this so I can take a look at it from an angle. Bring my camera above my text. Let's hit P on text and bring it further away from our solid layer. This is what it looks like right now. Use the orbit around tool so we can get a little bit of what's happening with our text. Increase your solid so it fills up the entire screen. And now we have something to work with. As you can see, I'm getting a pretty bulky text right now, but using the light layers, I can show that there is actually some dimension to my text layer. Bring it underneath your different lights. Let's first begin by turning on our point light. Immediately you can see that I have completely changed my text. Instead of looking flat, it's now pretty 3D. This is happening because first we turned on the geometry options, which again we'll learn about later. But essentially this single light right now helped me show that my layer is not just another 2D layer. You can drag this point light around. I'm going to place it above my text so I can show the different sides. You can see the insides looking pretty good. Next, let's turn on our spotlight. There we go. Now the front side of my text is pretty illuminated. I'm going to grab my point of interest and pull it back a bit. Maybe towards the center, and I'm going to have it go at an angle. Let's decrease the intensity because it's way too much, and also increase my cone angle. Decrease my intensity. Let's go for 40%. I'm going to go back to my point light and perhaps bring it above using my other window for top. If you're not getting top, you can go in here, right click, choose top. I'm going to put my point light behind my text. We can see the back right here. In spotlight, I'm going to increase my intensity and maybe change my point of interest. So just with these two lights, this is what it looked like before. We got our point light for the background. It illuminates the text. You can move it in different directions and illuminate the entire thing. I'm going to bring it in closer so we can see a little bit more of our other shapes. So I used my point light to show the back of my 3D text. Then I will use the spotlight to show the front of my 3D text. Pretty good. Just going to grab my light here, my spotlight, and move it further back so I can get a bigger area. Let's move the point of interest towards the center. and soften out our cone because this is a bit too harsh for me. Make it 100% and increase our cone size so I can get rid of that dark shadow area. So that's my spotlight. Now let's use the ambient light. Turn it on. The entire thing is really bright, but I'm just going to use ambient light to maybe add a soft blue color. Then reduce the intensity to maybe 23%. When we turn off our solid layer, it could give you a better result. Maybe I'll add a soft purple, just a purple hint. All right, so I've used 3 lights right now. In the last light, I'm just going to turn it on so we can see what's happening. With the last light, I'm getting that purple bit from my ambient light, but I'm also illuminating the front of my text. So this is where it's placed right now. The point of interest is on T. Let's bring it on between E and X. Open up the options and perhaps reduce the intensity so I can get a little bit of a softer look. And there we go. I've used the different types of light to illuminate my 3D text. When we turn on the background, we may get a pretty bright result. But now that my text can be distinguished from a 2D shape, I can go ahead and get rid of the background. So let's take a look at the steps one more time. This is our text before. Point light to illuminate from one single point evenly across the entire composition. 2 spotlight to illuminate through a cone. Cone is pretty big. To illuminate from a cone with the set radius and the feather. 3rd, we have ambient light to illuminate the entire composition without any limitations on one side. We also added a nice purple color. And 4th light to just bring more light over the front side of our text. When we turn on our solid, this also goes all the way back to our background. But right now we're just going to use parallel to show the front part of our text. So those were the different lights. This is a nice example on how we can use it for situations like this. I'm going to create a keyframe for Y rotation. Go to the end and type in 1 so it does 1 full cycle. Turn this back to half, and this is the result that we get. So using 4 different lights, we were able to turn a 2D text layer into 3D. And in the next lesson, we're going to see how we can use the Cinema 4D renderer, which I'm currently on. And I'll explain a little bit more about how we can add extrusion and bevel styles to our text and shape layers. With this knowledge, we can now move on to our next lesson.